So if you knew about bags of secret cash put in the trunk of the governor's car, political payoffs, and other stories of political corruption, what should you do with that information? I was recently approached by a husband and wife team who had witnessed shady political activity in Olympia during the Governor Locke administration, which was kind of back in the early 2000s. And they both recounted how they had been forced one time to collect unreported cash in these $500 collection amounts from various political insiders in Olympia while people attended a fundraiser event for Governor Locke. Now, keep in mind, the guy explained that he was the bagman collecting the mandatory $500 cash payout from each of the attendees before they went inside, and they made their official contributions at the fundraiser itself. Now, eventually, Governor Locke showed up, and one of his lackeys in a suit asked about the bag of cash, and he took it from the bagman whistleblower, and he put it in the trunk of the governor's car while Governor Locke made his 15-minute appearance, the speech, and then he, of course, moves on to his next stop. Now, the brown paper bag of tens of thousands of dollars in cash, they were never accounted for in any public disclosure reports at the time. I mean, how was this spent, and where did it go? Who knows? Nobody except the insiders knew about it at the time. Now, the bagman and his wife had become disgusted with the open corruption in Olympia at the time, and like many others over the years, they decided to move to Eastern Washington in an effort to escape the ugliness and the corruption of the political process in Olympia. Unfortunately, by the time he told me this story, over 2 decades have passed, and beyond the obvious statute of limitations issues, there really isn't a lot anyone can do with this knowledge today. I mean, Governor Locke was a corrupt guy back in the day, but that's like saying it rains in Seattle. It sucks, but this knowledge is just too little, too late to make a tangible impact on the drama that we witness today. Which brings me to the topic that I want to discuss in this video now. But before I get to that, however, I want to remind you down below, please click and subscribe to this video, like, share this video with others, particularly if they work for the government or they might have direct knowledge of the political corruption in Washington state today, or even in more recent times. If you share and you like and subscribe to this channel, it doesn't really cost you anything at all other than a little bit of time, but it does improve the visibility of this channel. I guarantee you're going to annoy anybody that's involved with corrupt politicians and bureaucrats, and perhaps you can share it with just that right whistleblower who's willing to expose the truth. I mean, you can always go to my website, linked down below at wethegovern.com, and subscribe to my email newsletter for additional shadow banned content that our corrupt political class certainly doesn't want you to see, and that our AG Bob Ferguson certainly wants to censor. And I warn you up front, I only share dangerous thoughts, definitely the definition of wrongthink. Ferguson probably defines me as a domestic violent extremist for exposing his corruption and willingness to discuss these details that nobody in the traditional media is going to ever share with you. Now back to the topic at hand, bags of unreported illegal cash, political kickbacks, and other shady activities. These are certainly happening today in Washington state, just as they did a few decades ago during the Governor Locke administration. I mean, human nature just doesn't change. Politicians, bureaucrats, and special interests, they just keep doing dishonest things, particularly if nobody exposes their corruption. So if you have direct knowledge of this type of activity, you can let me know. I actually do want to expose the truth, and that makes me very different than the traditional legacy media like the Seattle Times or The Stranger. I don't know if there's a difference between the two, or King 5 News, who mostly exists, I think, now to cover up stories like this. They don't want to step on political toes or rock the political establishment in Olympia or Seattle. And it seems unlikely they ever will tell you that story if you pass it on to them, unless they receive permission from their friends in the political elite first. And then for some strange and unknowable reason, my guess is that they're never going to get that permission. And that's very different from what I'm willing to do. I don't ask their permission, and I step on the toes all the time. And if you don't believe me, just go to the article that I've linked down below where I detail at least 210 politicians, judges, and others that I've caught, exposed, and who have been sanctioned, fined, and sued for breaking the law. Then it includes most of the top political leaders that we still have in our state today, plus a hell of a lot of their friends. And in addition to getting me removed from their Christmas card lists, it should be a pretty good indication that I'm not going to protect or cover up their misdeeds. So keep in mind that list doesn't count the hundreds of others that I have confronted over the years who were able to get political cover for their misdeeds. And I'll still expose them and their bad behavior if I can. I'm not going to stop, and I can do even more if you can assist me with evidence and document what you know. I'll share it to everyone else. And if you want to remain anonymous, then we can work with you to protect your anonymity or take other steps to ensure that they won't know where and how we got this information. And really, this is just about exposing the truth. And with so much dishonesty in Olympia and Seattle, it seems highly unlikely that they can buy off, extort, or intimidate everyone, and that every person involved is completely corrupted. I mean, there are people who know where the bodies are buried. Hopefully that's more figurative rather than literal, but if you want to have the truth get out there, just let me know. The political elite, the politicians, the bureaucrats, the special interests alike, they may believe that they're above the law and that nobody will hold them accountable. And to be fair, if they're referring to AG Bob Ferguson or local judges, they might be right. However, I believe that if the public learns the truth, and we, and I mean you and I, and our neighbors, and the rest of us who actually live here, I believe that we can hold them accountable. But it starts with documenting and exposing the truth. So if you're the unlucky soul tasked with collecting the bags of cash for Governor Jay Inslee or Attorney General Bob Ferguson or Hillary Franz or Speaker Jenkins or whoever else in higher office or our political class, that make sure you take photos, document your exploits, copy the documents, give me the evidence. There's no reason that you have to be alone or burdened with this experience or knowledge. And then I realize the techniques and methods today might have changed a bit. They may be a bit more sophisticated than paper bags of cash right now. But you will know better than anyone else how to explain the corruption and the problems that you have witnessed. So let's expose the truth now rather than waiting a few decades to discuss it, long past the time that it can do us any good. Now, before I get to the silly comments that I usually get when I post a video like this, I realize that not every single person in a senior role in our government is this corrupt. It might be rare, but some are probably semi-honest. And I think that most would agree the corrupt, absolutely still deserve to be exposed. So in closing, I ask you basically for just 3 things. Number 1, please share this video with people who may have access to this type of information or know similar stories in our state, wherever they might be working. Number 2, always collect evidence and document it. I can't just produce a story solely on one person's memory, but if you have evidence to back it up, then we have something that we can probably work with. And number 3, you can make a difference. You, not somebody else. I mean, nobody else is coming to do it for you. The change absolutely starts with you, always. And always show up to make the biggest impact that you can. Because, as I always say, and you can help prove with your information, the future belongs to those who show up. It doesn't always have to belong to the corrupt.